Welcome to Adobe Illustrator CC 2021 Classroom in a Book, Chapter 14, Creating Artwork for a T-Shirt. This is Part 1. So with this one, let's go ahead and open that L14 Start 1 and do a file Save As. Let's change it to our first initial last name, underscore Adobe Illustrator Classroom in a Book, Chapter 14. And let's call it Shirt because there are two of them on this one. And let's go ahead, I'm in my Chapter 14 file and say Save. Now we want to make sure we're on the same space, so let's go to our window, say OK, to our window and our workspace, and let's reset those essentials, make sure we're all working from the same place. All right, so when we're working with symbols, symbols are a reusable art objects that are stored within a certain panel. So all instances of those symbols are actually linked to each other. So when you edit one original, you can actually edit all of them at the same time. So that can actually work in your favor. Maybe you decide to make pink flowers and you might want to make them green instead. It's very easy to do. So let's go ahead and use that default Illustrator to try this out. Let's grab our selection tool and select on that larger artboard. And let's do a view, fit artboard and window. And right now, it doesn't look like we have a lot, but we're going to be getting there. We want to go ahead and hide the smart guides for now. So we're going to go to our properties and we want to go to the third one over. And we want to click to hide those smart guides because we want to be able to move things around and not have it snap anywhere. Let's go ahead now and open our symbols library. So let's go Window and Symbols. It's about toward the bottom there. And from our symbols, we want to actually add something. So let's go to our symbol library, which is the little books, and let's come down here to Tiki. And from Tiki, we want to go ahead and add this fish. So once I click on the fish, it's going to go ahead and add that into my symbol library. I don't need anything else out of the symbol library, so I'm going to go ahead and push close. I'm going to slide this over here for now so I don't have to look at it. And when we add things to the symbol library, it really is only working in the active documents. So you don't have to worry about having a boatload of stuff in there that you don't necessarily want. So with the selection tool, let's go ahead and drag that fish on here to our artboard. And let's do it 2 more times. So we get 3 fish for our t-shirt. All right, so with one of the fishes, let's go ahead and make him just a little bit smaller. So I'm going to hold Shift and drag and make him just a little bit smaller. And let's go ahead and what do we want to do? Oh, we could have made a copy by dragging him over, but we're good. We have 3 now. All right, so let's go ahead and drag this third one and make him even smaller yet. So we're going to have 3 fish. All right, so let's drag all 3 fish kind of into a position. So let's go this guy here, one here. It's going to make more sense when we start laying it into the t-shirt itself, but we can always move them around. Let's go ahead and do a select and deselect. And let's see what else we're going to do. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to edit one of these symbols. So let's go ahead with the selection tool and let's double click on one of these fish. And it's going to enter saying, yes, we're going to edit one of the symbols. So let's say, yes, that's okay. And we're going to go into symbol editing mode. Now from there, let's go ahead and grab our zoom so we can actually see what's going on. I'm going to pull that across a little bit so I can zoom in. Let's grab that direct selection tool and click on part of the green head. So with his green head, let's go ahead and go to our swatches, so our fill. And let's go into our color mixer, which is the palette. And we're going to make him just a little bit darker, but I want the whole thing to get darker. So I'm going to hold Shift as I drag this towards a little bit more cyan. And you're going to see it's going to make all of those numbers darker. So it's going to not just move one, it's going to move all those sliders at one time for us. So let's go ahead and double click away from there. And I'll go ahead and you'll see that we have now updated all the fish at the same time. So that works pretty cool. So maybe you don't want to update all of them. You want them to be dynamic, which means you can change certain appearance properties without changing the original symbol. So let's go ahead with the symbols panel. Let's go to that fish symbol. And let's go to our symbol options at the top of or at the bottom here. And it looks kind of like a notepad. And it's going to say, what do you want to do? We want to go ahead and change this to be dynamic symbols. So if I change one, it's not going to go ahead and change all of them. And let's go ahead and say OK. So now if I look in my symbols library, I see I've got a little plus here, which means it's now a dynamic symbol, which means I can change one without changing all of them. So let's grab our direct selection tool and grab the head of our smallest little fish here. And we're going to go ahead and play with that one a little bit. So let's go to our fill. And with our fill, let's go ahead and switch to our colors and kind of change it to a different blue-green kind of color, so that his head is definitely a different color than everyone else. And as you can see, it just changed the one symbol instead of all of them. So that's sometimes what we want to do. So let's go ahead and switch back out of there, do a Control S and save. And now we want to go ahead and create some of our own symbols. So Illustrator lets us create and save our own symbols. So let's switch artboards, switch over to number 2. And we've got a pre-drawn flower and a surfboard here. So with the new symbol, let's select that flower with our selection tool. And we're going to go here to the bottom of our symbols, and we want to hit that plus sign that says new symbol. And now you're going to see we're going to get a pop-up. It's going to say, what do you want to call it? We want to call it flower. We're going to go ahead and make it a dynamic symbol. We don't need to worry about the export type because we're not going into animate. And let's go ahead and say OK. So now when I look into my folder, my symbols library, I've now got that green element as well. So let's go ahead and grab our selection tool on that surfboard. And another way to create that symbol is to just drag that symbol straight into that symbols library. So I'm going to go ahead and call this surfboard and dynamic symbol and say OK. And you'll see now I've got that as well as part of my symbol library. So let's go ahead to switch back to our other artboard. So let's go back to our t-shirt artboard, and I'm going to want 4 of these flowers. So let's do a flower, and then I could do an alternate drag, or I could drag another one from here. There's a couple of different ways to get those. So you can always rearrange those later, and don't forget you can always change them. You know, maybe you're going to shift, maybe you're going to rotate, maybe you're going to make them a little bit smaller, because you clearly don't want them to look like all exactly the same. Let me make this one flip it totally over, just a little bit smaller. Okay, so now I've got some flowers. I'm going to do a select and a deselect. Oh, I don't have anything selected, and a Control S to save what I've got so far. So at times we want to edit just specific instances of something on our artboard. So we need to actually break that link between the symbols. So let's go ahead and turn our smart guides on by doing View and Smart Guides. It's about a third of the way down. And now we're going to go ahead with our selection tool. We want to drag 3 copies of that surfboard onto our artwork. So I've got 1, 2, and 3. And now we want to go ahead and arrange them so they're a little bit different. We're actually going to end up cutting off the bottoms of them, so I'm not too worried about how they look, but maybe I want to make them all a little bit bigger. So I can do a shift click all of them, shift and hold, make them all a little bit bigger, because right now my fish are way bigger than my surfboard. All right, so I've got my panels here. So let's go ahead now and select the center surfboard. And in our properties panel, let's go to the break link button. So if you go to properties and we do break link, which means if we do something to this one, we don't want it to happen to all the other ones. So what does that mean? Let me, 1 second. So we just stopped off. We're going to change this one. So we've got our zoom tool. Let's grab our zoom tool and go ahead and zoom in just a little bit so we can see those anchor points when we go to look at them a little bit closer. And